If you have been paying attention, you'll be able to notice that a majority of the people I've been talking about at this point have only been majors in philosophy. And then the question is, where does the psychology come in? So the psychology comes in with the help of a German philosopher who became the first psychologist, and many might argue that he's actually the father of psychology. So this is a German philosopher by the name of Wilhelm Wundt. So Wilhelm Wundt established or founded the first lab to study psychology in the year 1879. And so Wilhelm Wundt designed this lab to study the conscious mind. This is an exam question, so please pay attention to that part. So he established or designed this lab to study the conscious mind. And so in order for him to study the conscious mind, he had to develop a particular method that he was going to use. And so at Leipzig University, he decided to devise a method that was later called introspection. So introspection was formally devised by Wilhelm's student. So the name of Wilhelm's student was Edward Titchener. So introspection was this psychological method of looking within yourself, or it was a very subjective way of interpreting the human experience when understanding psychological phenomena. So it focused on how the mind does what it does. So that was Wilhelm's idea. He wanted to study psychology by breaking it down into chunks or into units. And then we called this approach structuralism. So what's the main take here? What I'm trying to say is that whenever they talk about structuralism, think of Wilhelm Wundt, who established the first lab to study psychology of the conscious mind at Leipzig University in 1879, and then also think of his student Edward Titchener, right? And then the method they proposed was a method called introspection. However, structuralism had a very big downside. The reason is it is very subjective, and then the nature of science is that science should not be very subjective. What do I mean? What I mean is that suppose I asked 5 people how they feel about, let's say, the weather. All those 5 people will give me different answers, right? And then that will compromise the way I collect my data. And that was the major problem with structuralism. And so an American psychologist, is actually the first American psychologist, by the name of James William, came up with another method to study psychology. This method was called functionalism. So functionalism was focusing not on how, but on why the mind does what it does. So that will conclude our lecture.